Didn't the other kids tell you not to come here? Go back before it's too late!
At the heart of horror, there has always been more than spooks and scares.
Sometimes, it's not what you see, but what you hear.
Welcome to Sound Scary.
Each week, we talk to the artists,
The musicians,
the fans, the people who haunt the shadowy corners of your mind.
join us as we delve into the deepest
Darkest.
and most unforgettable earscapes.
Welcome
To Sound Scary.
Welcome back to another episode of Sound Scary. I am your host, Ryan Cultrera, and as always, I am joined by my co-host.
I'm JimmyO, James Oster. And, Ryan, I think you would agree with me is that we've had a lot of great guests, and we've had people that, we admire their work, but sometimes you see a filmmaker, you see a screenwriter, you see somebody with a voice that you don't expect, and you just, it shines, and it excuse the French, it really fucking blows you away. And I'm really, really excited to announce tonight we have a really special guest. Someone you may have not been too familiar with, but I think you will be. I want to welcome Cory Michael Dawson. He's a wonderful filmmaker, and Cory, I'm going to jump in right now because I saw what you did with Injurious, a short film, and I want to hear about that story. I want you to tell Ryan about that story because it is just an amazing story how that came together and how you made this amazing fucking short.
Please, I loved it.
Oh wow, thank you so much. That's really kind. Funny enough, it actually turned out to be a horror experience trying to make a little horror film. My earliest actual horror short films themselves were horror films, and it got to a point where I was trying to try new things. I was going for slasher, I was going for The Shining, and I really wanted to branch out and do something a little different, maybe in the style of like a No Country for Old Men, even though that's not a conventional horror. It's just unsettling. And so one of my friends at the time reached out to me and he said, hey, can we collaborate on something? I would even play a tree. I'll like paint myself green, stand in the background and be a tree. And I'm just like, that's commitment. I appreciate that, but I'm just happy to work on something with you. Let's figure out what our interests are. And when it came down to that kind of horror, we're like, okay, let's get the ball rolling on a simple like idea that we can just shoot, on a weekend, no dramas was the initial intention. And so we're just like, we'll keep it simple, have a guy in a car on like the side of the road, and he's dealing with his own internal conflicts, like a psychological horror thriller in like a country, rural, isolated area. And so we ended up getting some really good talent from an Aussie show called Neighbours, an actress from that. We got Andy McPhee from Sons of Anarchy.
Nice.
And yeah, so it was we were getting a really good team together. And me being the professional I wanted to be, I said, I'm going to get a permit to book a location. I'm not going to go rogue and, film somewhere. I'm going to be responsible. I'm going to get a permit, organized everything. Day of shooting, it turned out to be the coldest, wettest, most miserable day in Melbourne, my city, in 20 years. Okay, like literally like a typhoon, hurricane
Oh
weather.
no.
Horrible. And so I made the executive decision, okay, we're not going to shoot in these conditions, especially if we're outside. People are going to get electrocuted, we're going to damage equipment. It's just not ideal.
Right.
Delayed it a week. We show up at the location the next week, and the gates are locked. There's no one around. We can't get in. And again, trying to be the responsible producer person behind it, I call up the locations office and say, hey, I've got a permit and we're locked out. Like, what can we do? And they said, well, your permit was for last week, so you're going to have to reapply, and that can take 8 weeks. So, better luck next time, kind of deal. And I explained, well, last week it was the wettest, coldest, most miserable day in Melbourne in 20 years. Surely there's an exemption there. And they wouldn't facilitate. They said, no, sorry, better luck next time. And I tried to remain optimistic to my crew because they were all watching me. Mm-hmm. And my DOP says, look, we're all here. Let's just do this. So he gets his toolbox and he actually unscrews part of the gate, gets in his four-wheel drive, plows through the gate, and we're now into our location. And I kid you not even 10 minutes goes by. And then all of a sudden, woo, 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 woo. We got park rangers and Victoria police showing up, and that was really disheartening because it was the perfect location. Literally, there was no cars or anything, totally isolated area. And it was very picturesque. And all of a sudden, we're blown out of the water, saying, no, sorry, you guys have to pack up your equipment. You have to leave. But not only that, because the police were there, they asked for ID. And because they were saying, breaking and entering, damage to park property and stuff like that, I said, can you give us some ID? And I panicked at this point, but I thought, thankfully, I have my film school ID from my old film school days, and I looked like someone I went to school with, and they were a producer I didn't necessarily get along with because they just couldn't book equipment in time, they couldn't book the location in time, and I ended up with their film school ID when they said, can you just book the equipment? And I never saw them again, so I never gave it back. In the heat of the moment, I just pulled that thing out, I handed it over, and I was like, this is my school. It's a film. It's for film school. It wasn't. It was for me. But I'm like, it's for film school. So I take down all the details and things like that. Never heard from them again. I didn't really get in trouble. I never followed it up. But yeah. Anyway, so now I'm stuck with a convoy of actors, makeup artists, camera crew, PAs. Everybody is now looking at me. Where do we go from here? So I have to lead this convoy to the nearest isolated area that I think we can get away with. And thankfully, we managed to shoot for a while without actually getting bothered by, residents or police or park rangers. However, that's not where the horrors stop. So when we finally show up at the new location, we're ready to go. We're all set up. The battery in the camera decides to just not work. It wasn't dead. It wasn't drained.
Oh, no.
It was just, sorry, does not compute today. Try again tomorrow kind of situation.
Jeez.
And thankfully, I brought my DSLR. The DOP brought his DSLR for still photography. And someone else brought their DSLR. So we managed to shoot the whole short film with different DSLRs, running them till the battery went down.
Wow.
And I wish I could say that's still where the horrors ended. But when it came to Andy McPhee, how I landed that connection is, so back to my film school days, one of my classmates was Cassandra McGrath from Wolf Creek. And yeah, she was getting into, she was understanding this guy's leaning more towards horror. She wasn't really leaning towards wanting to act in horror anymore. She wanted to, try something different. She'd done Wolf Creek. But she's like, well, you should work with Andy because, he loves horror. He could be really good for you. So she gave me his contact. I reached out to him on a wing and a prayer saying, worst case scenario is, he says no. Sure enough, he says, yeah, I'll come by and do it. Just give me a time and a place and I'm there. And so, yeah, we'd gone through 2 DSLRs. We're now waiting for Andy for the third act. And we're just hanging around, taking a bit of a break. And then you just hear it's in the middle of nowhere, and you're just that's a motorcycle. I think we've got someone from Sons of Anarchy here. And sure enough, like he pulls up, and I'm thinking he's like ready to go with the lines, but he made the decision like, hey, like what you're going with is like really sort of ambiguous. What I think you want to do is maybe focus it in on him, because I had it where it was like a full-on conversation with like the Grim Reaper and going full psychological about like meaning of life and stuff like that. And he's like, no, that's too much for this. We're in his world. So like Death should be asking him questions and getting answers from him, not the other way around. And so he really brought a change to the third act that I never really saw. And I'm kind of glad that we did go with that, because it worked for what it was. And I never expected it to do anything. I was just having fun with friends. And one day I'm in the supermarket and I'm getting milk, and I get a buzz in my pocket, check it, email from Village Roadshow Australia, like Warner Brothers. Your film has been nominated in like the top 5 horror short films in the entire country for the year. And like it got to be in their Real Horror Film Festival, like the inaugural festival at Warner Brothers Movie World up on the Gold Coast. And for all of Halloween, it got to like play in cinemas there, and tourists and people who attended the theme park got to see it and vote for their favorite horror film. And I literally just made it to have fun with friends, and it got me to even live in LA with Andy McPhee. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, that's the story of the short.
Wow. I had to overcome a lot of obstacles, but definitely worth it in the end.
Yeah, it was blessed. So I really appreciate the fact that I can talk about it today. Yeah.
And I understand you're making plans right now to expand it into a feature. So I was wondering kind of if you could talk about what your approach was to expanding that story.
Yeah, right. Well, originally I was actually writing a American boxing murder mystery film, and had that gearing up ready to go before COVID unfortunately happened. And so I was here in Australia for that, and I thought, well, I really want to do something that can show my like strengths as a director, because a lot of people were interested in the script, like my boxing one, but when it comes to directing, it's a little like ambitious for like a first timer. At least that's what I feel like the reception has been. So I said, well, no, I'm gonna do a simple film here in Australia. And my mate who I did the short film with said, no, you should do it as like as a feature, and we can just expand that universe, actually give it some depth. So yeah, this time round, it's a new story, but it still follows the same kind of unhinged, mentally unstable sort of criminal, hell bent on a journey into the middle of nowhere. But I've now given him more definition. He's a lawyer, and he's sent on a wild goose chase for cash by one of his clients, who happens to be the most wanted criminal in the country. So. And it was originally written to be Australian, but recently our producers went to the American film market in LA, and they said, well, hang on a minute, based on the reception, why don't we actually make this American? Like it was inspired by Quentin Tarantino, the Coens, Elmore Leonard, like Get Shorty and stuff like that. So it only makes sense to really kind of go back to where those roots started and try to revolutionize that genre again. So we're now taking it to America, and a lot of people will be expecting it to be the horror that the short was, but this time around I want to really play with genre convention. It has really horror elements in moments, but I want it disguised in that crime caper sort of start, so it unravels, and then we go, oh my god, this is what the fuck, holy shit, where did this come from? Basically, like I like to value my shock factor on the holy shit scale. Like if it gets people going, whoa, that's going places, I don't know, I want to ease them into that. So that's where awesome. The feature has been leading. And yeah, we're shooting a trailer here in Melbourne in the next couple of months. Nice. Just to raise some funds to hopefully really boost the interest in America for when we're doing the feature next year.
Very, very cool. We'll make sure to spread that around when the time comes for you.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you so much.
we have some really, here's the thing. I've read the scripts, and I got a chance to kind of see the world through your eyes, and it's a real dude. These are really wonderful scripts, both of the ones I've read. I want to talk about, you say that you mentioned genre, and you mentioned that you like to play with genre. What is the appeal of that for you? Because a lot of filmmakers are doing that. You see a lot, whether it's Edgar Wright, whether it's Tarantino, that is a very common thread. What is it about that for you as a young filmmaker, kind of going into this and really finding your own voice?
That's a very good question. I got to admit, I get bored pretty easily. Like, even when it comes to like dinner and food and things like that, like I can't just sit down and enjoy one big bowl of soup. I will get bored. Like if I go to Subway, I can't get it 1 foot long. I need 2 different 6 inches because I will get bored. And so it's kind of like that with cinema as well. Like, I love it when all of a sudden you take the plot and I don't want to use the word twist, but you just all of a sudden you take it in a different direction. Like From Dusk Till Dawn. I know it's a Quentin Tarantino thing to mention, but I went into that blind, and oh my god, the vampire bit, like where did that come from? Like it excites. Like when it defies expectations. It's magical. Like it's unforeseen, and it just takes you places you wouldn't believe.
I agree.
And expanding on that, you've mentioned it seems like Tarantino is one of them, but who are some of your creative influences?
Well, yeah, Tarantino as the writer filmmaker, but then like from a director point of view, I got to admit I love Fincher. So Fight Club is a big one for me. So I like seeing the poster behind Jimmy here every time. Every time I talk to this guy, that inspires me. But I've also got a bit of Martin McDonagh in my DNA.
Nice.
Something about his writing is so deep. It's so shocking, but it's personal and it's deep. And he is magical in ways that I feel like goes underappreciated. People automatically go to the Coens or Scorsese when they say, well, they define genres. They do gangster, they do funny, they do this, they do that. But Martin McDonagh does it perfectly, and he won an Oscar for doing it with a short film. Like Six Shooter is brilliant.
Oh yeah.
Like I am inspired by him because even his not theatrical work, but his theater work. Seeing that kind of stuff on a stage is exciting because it's more intimate and it's more personal, and you take something away from that you can think about and go, hang on a minute, how can I apply that to my own life? It may be very profane and very in your face, but I feel like that kind of makes it more memorable in a way because you're so shocked by that. It's an experience. So he's probably up there with among my biggest influences.
Wow. Have you seen his latest?
The Banshees of Inisherin?
Yeah.
I have not, but it is genuinely one of my most anticipated of the year.
Same.
I'm telling you both, it's magical. You'll probably have seen it by the time this airs, but my god, if you have not seen this film, please, god, go see this movie. One of the best films of the year, by far. With those mentioned, one of the things I do find is that when reading or seeing your work, I still feel like it's your voice coming through. I don't feel like it's coming from a someone, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this cool Tarantino thing. It feels very much you, a Cory thing. Is that something that just comes naturally to you? Do you find a way to to separate yourself and make sure it feels like truthful and genuine?
Oh, absolutely. Like I even teach my friends how to screenwrite if they're into movies. And one of the biggest lessons I try to give to them is, find your own voice, speak from your soul. Like if you have something to talk about that's really meaningful and personal to you, like if you find your voice, it's all of a sudden you can have people comparing you to whomever, But if that's your voice, then it's your voice, it's your words. And so when it comes to my scripts, I'm going to be humbled and honored with whoever compares me to whoever. It is my voice. These are the films that excite me, especially with like Injurious being, a lot of people are going to expect it to be a horror film, and I want to play with their expectations, because you don't want to give them exactly what they want. You don't want to give them their baby formula so they're satisfied and then they have their hunger for like the next baby formula. You want to give them something that makes them hungry. You want them, okay, I've had that, but I want more. So like with Injurious, I treated it like the barber pole type situation, where it seems like it's never ending in a sense, like not that it's long, but I break the timeline. So where we start is also where we end. That's not a spoiler. That's just kind of, I always like to structure my stories in that way so we can come full circle. And so like that's where genre play and breaking that can be really fun as well, because when we think we're getting one genre at the start, and then halfway through when we have that major conflict and we go off course a little bit and we change to then see how we get to that moment to begin with, we may no longer see that as comedy or horror or whatever I initially tried to convince you that genre was. Like with Rabbit Punch, it's a little bit of everything. At first it looks like it's going to be a sports film because it's boxing, but then all of a sudden it's crime, it's thriller, it's horror, it's comedy, it's dark comedy, and it's just because I never want people to know what's going to happen next. Like even if I'm feeding you here's the intention of the scene, this is whether it's verbal or non-verbal, you're going to take something away from that scene, but at the same time I'm going to play with you so you're not going to know what to expect from the next thing. Like you think, okay, yeah, that's the piece of the puzzle. Oh, hang on a minute, I'll take you somewhere else and I'll come back to that. But I don't know, it keeps people engaged so they don't look at their phone, or they're not distracted by other things in life. You want to see what the hell is going to come at me next. Like what the fuck, holy shit, where did that come from? So
nice. I'm looking, Jimmy just sent me that, so I'm looking forward to reading that next. I'm working my way through Injurious right now, and not to spoil too much, but as someone who I almost lost a leg in the hospital, so your opening really messed me up, man.
Thank you. Oh yeah,
like just that mention, I'm like, no, let's not talk about losing legs.
yeah, no, literally, like how shocking that material is, I really felt like it was necessary in the opening sort of moments. I have to give you okay, this is kind of what you're in for. But even though it goes darker places later, it's still like, if you're not down with the clown from the opening, like, yeah, thank you so much for appreciating that.
It was a great way to introduce the character, because his immediate response to that was like, well, I know who this guy is. Like that was a brilliant way to kick it off.
The worst lawyer that money can buy on one hand, but on the other hand, he will do everything he can for you. You just gotta hope that he can pull through.
Well, that brings me to something that you it's hard to write characters that are dark and that are cynical and that are kind of dirty, I guess you could say, and still make an audience care. I think you do a rather terrific job at that. Are there some of these characters, these filmmakers that you think, or some of these moments, some of these movies that have done this, that really represented that, like turning the dirty and the ugly into something kind of respectful?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is Frances McDormand in 3 Billboards. I mean, like, what a gritty character. I mean, ideally, you don't really want to side with her or her choices, but you can understand why, and you kind of respect it because, she is a mum who's willing to do whatever is necessary. And, so you don't necessarily have to agree with someone who takes those choices, but if you can understand them and maybe sympathize, respect, and that's enough to open that window, and that's a window into their soul. Another one, like, I'm wearing a Taxi Driver shirt.
Nice.
So, like, again, he makes some really poor choices, but you kind of empathize with him a little bit. He's trying his best, like, especially with Harvey Keitel's character. Like, he thinks he's making the right choice in killing, what's the character's name again? Not Spider, that's Goodfellas.
I'm drawing a blank now too.
It's Sport. Yeah. So yeah, when he kills Sport, he's doing it he thinks he's being good and wholesome. Like, this is a bad guy. I'm taking this bad guy off the streets. Not something I would do, not something I would ever condone or, certainly agree with. But you can understand why he does it, because Sport is really hurting children and exploiting children. And, it's, if you can open that window into a soul that's dark and depraved, but you can make them sympathetic and understandable, that in itself, I think, is interesting.
I think so too. Now we are running out of time for the show, but
yes.
I want to give Ryan the last question for the night, and then we'll. I want to definitely make it so you let people know where they can see your work, where they can see all that stuff. But let's get to that before I think Ryan has something to ask.
Yeah, I mean, and we got 9 more minutes, so we can do a nice little wrap up.
Cool, perfect. Okay, that's great.
So I wanted to ask, so you've talked about how the feature version of your film started as an Australian movie, and now you are shifting it into being more of an American film. So I want to ask, what differences do you feel there are between the American film industry and the Australian film industry? What have you noticed?
Oh, wow, there's major differences. So Australia is mostly governed by government funding. So you have your Screen Australia, and they have their little subsidies, like Film Victoria, and like that's just the state that I'm in. And really, like, it's all government funded to a sense. We have very little private funding. We have no studio system. So if any international productions come to Australia, they'll generally go to Movie World, which is Warner Brothers on the Gold Coast, or Fox Studios in Sydney. There's nice little VFX houses in Adelaide and Melbourne and all over the shop. Like, we do have some really wonderful talent here, but unfortunately our talent has to be successful overseas before they can really sort of make new waves here. An example recently is there's a film franchise called Wog Boy, with some really talented Aussie actors like Vince Colosimo, and an actor from my Injurious, the Aussie version, Tony Nicolopoulos. But basically, the first film became an instant cult classic. Did really well, made millions of dollars internationally. They made a sequel like 10 years later, went to cinemas again, made millions internationally. Cut to another 10 years. They said, let's make a third film. Screen Australia says, we're not really interested in it. It doesn't seem culturally appropriate, so we're not going to invest a penny. And so they had to go and self-funded private investment, make the movie, and again, it's now making millions of dollars. But because it's not really in the best interest of the government funding bodies, it's just like, oh wow, we're kind of losing a lot of interesting Aussie content. Like, horrors are having to be made on no money, or like genre films are really being let down because they're being forgotten and left behind. And I'm trying to hopefully get back to a point where we can say genre films are not only fun, but because I'm big on finding your voice, there's messages behind my stuff. Like, it may be hidden and layered behind the grit and the shock factor, but deep down I actually do have insight, that an intention of the scene that I really kind of hope gets people thinking when they leave. There are those messages with genre films. It doesn't always have to be these art house historical biopics. We can have mixed messages and say, hey, all right, cool, go and see a horror movie, have the time of your life. Maybe think about maybe I'm going to, not trip over something or like lose my keys, or that's really cliched, but make better choices, basically.
Very in the tradition of kind of like Romero and stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
Where genre has something to say.
Exactly, like and look at like Carpenter's influences on film, not even just horror. Like he wanted to try different things and break the genre conventions. Look at They Live. He said, no, I'm gonna get Roddy Piper. Like he made bold choices. He wanted to have fun, and like even that's a film with a message. It's a genre film with a message.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to jump back into the American side of me. Obviously, you can hear a mixed accent. So my dad's American, and he's a musician in California, and I'm actually named after the Lost Boys because he grew up in Santa Cruz.
Nice.
And that was like one of his favorite movies growing up. And yeah, my mom wanted to be like, my mom said, okay, well, if I can contribute to the name, let's drop the E so it's a little bit unique. But yeah, I've got that Lost Boys angle, so I'm hoping to I want to play in both Australia and America's sandboxes because I love both industries. I love even European cinema. I want to try making French New Wave films, and there's just so much fun out there to try and explore.
Well, that's awesome. We're really looking forward to seeing what you do.
Yeah, no, it's always a pleasure, dude, and I really, really, really love that you came on, and appreciate it, brother.
Oh, thank you so much. I also want to say, I apologize if the audio was a little bit like distorted by the dog coming around, like he was munching his bone.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
I think that's appropriate on a horror podcast. Like he was eating bones, so
makes sense. It makes sense.
There we go. It's appropriate. And real quick before we run out of time, tell people where they can find you and your work.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I've got some of my short films back in the day on YouTube. Cause and Effect Films. So CORZ, the Aussie Cause and Effect. So it's a play on the word Cause and Effect Films. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook, Cory Michael Dawson, and I'll be posting updates and everything from there. I don't have Twitter, so I'm terrible with technology.
Well, we'll have you back on when you come back to the States and start making a film.
Oh, I'm so excited to come back and start filming around March is I think when we're going to come back. So we're going to be filming in March and hopefully have it. I'm probably being optimistic. It's also got those Christmas themes. So like I love a dark Christmas movie like Black Christmas or Bad Santa.
Hell yeah.
Deadly Night, So I'm hoping I can maybe get it ready for Christmas. If I'm editing this thing, I'll be up for months just editing, so I'm gonna get it ready for Christmas next year.
Hell yeah, I love that subgenre. I really do.
Well, thank you so much for having me, guys. You're amazing and big fans. Like I'm truly honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been great talking to you. Jimmy's been telling me all about you, and I've been really looking forward to meeting you and kind of hearing more about you and your career. And I really look forward to seeing where you take it from here.
Oh, thank you so much. Hey, up and beyond. I don't know what else to say there, but I'm going to try my best.